typically a little bit more excitable. I talk a lot, but like he's usually more the back in the past would be more uh, like the one you would expect to be saying and yelling crazy stuff.
Okay.
Was typically, his role. We called him YOLO from time to time. And that's what he would say every day of every week. YOLO!
Oh, you're watching the Broly movie now.
Yep. Put on Broly because the other one was over. Alright, let's end this. I want to stay on the screen. I'm so tempted to see what Venture Forth does, but I don't want it to spoil anything for me.
Yeah.
Dang.
Okay, so
Revan the Wounded.
God,
he looks sick.
First off, let me write down these names real quick. So there's Revan, of course.
Revan the Wounded.
There's Scourge.
Oh wait, no, I need to change my character's name. It's not Revan. It's Navarre.
There's Nyrus, not to be confused with Nihilus. Mitra. Bastila.
There's another section over here titled Actions. I don't even know what that is.
And then, is it Cordova? I think Cordova. Oh. Okay. Let's go Dima. Okay. So...
Not how much bass is in this movie. Goodness. It's like nothing but bass.
Where did your notes leave off at from what I was discussing? And then I'll go from there.
Let me pull them up. My notepad. Sticky notes.
And when I give you this summary of this book, that's going to further signify the fact that ChatGPT just was BSing about Revan being an overrated character.
So I was at this is where my last notes stopped. Darth Revan, he killed Darth Malak and ended the war that was taking place. Last thing I heard, Cordova of Clan Ordo was with Darth Revan, rolling together on a planet, and then Cordova gets walked in on by Villa. Villa questions Cordova.
Okay, Villa questions Cordova. Okay, or Cordova. So, oh my goodness. So Villa questioned Cordova of like why they were, or the motives, because they opened the casket and found the helmet of Mandalore, and so Villa was basically like, "Hey, like, what are you guys doing? Blah blah blah." Hand it over, because, like I mentioned, in that time period, the Mandalorian people decided who the leader was depending on who held the helmet of Mandalore. So anyways, she goes into this little chamber that Revan and Cordova are in, and they're basically like, "Hey, hand it over." And Cordova's like, did you really think I was gonna like take it for myself? Like, I don't want to lead, blah blah blah. And I forget what exactly the conflict was, but there was some kind of information that Revan still needed from the helmet before it got turned over. Villa wasn't willing to wait, so they attacked them, and Cordova was forced to defend himself, which in defending himself killed his wife Villa and her personal guard, basically. Cordova claimed the helmet for himself and became the new leader of Mandalore. And Revan had a vision of another planet to go to. I don't recall what the name of it is off the top of my head. I should have written it down. But basically, it's a planet that he went to. It's a flashback he had of the planet that he went to that caused him and Malik to betray the Jedi and turn to the dark side. So anyways, push comes to shove. Cordova stays behind to become the leader of Mandalore, and Revan moves on with his mission to further gain his memories and fight a force that he felt was coming, but he couldn't explain what it was. And that's the whole reason why he left his pregnant wife at the time, was because he felt in the force that something was coming, but he didn't know what it was yet. And what he basically told his wife, because his wife was like, why do you have to leave, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, look, I can leave now and deal with this, or I can play ignorant to it and just live life comfortably, and then our child in their future will have to deal with it.
Have to deal with it, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's like, okay, I get it. Like, you go deal with it, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's why he's on the mission. That's why he more or less abandoned his family, but didn't really abandon them. But anyways, so goes to this planet. As he enters the planet's atmosphere, he notices, like, there's no life there. Like, there's no people, there's no planetary life, there's no insects, nothing. Everything with life essence at all, gone, wiped away. And later you find out that the Sith Emperor at that time decided to basically test his own strength and stripped that planet of all of its life. And basically, as he's going there onto that planet with no life on it, there's also two Sith that are already there. And those Sith names are Scourge and Nihilus, which they themselves have their own B-plot, which their B-plot is to... Hold on. Alright, 1 second. The baby's crying.
We are on pause. I hope this Darth Revan knows. Save. There we go. We got some. Now we actually have a folder for our notes. Now. Ooh. Man, that first hour, or first 2 hours was something. It's going to be hard to come back after that. It's going to be difficult.
Okay. Um.
Yes, there we go.
So to short and sweet explain Scourge and Nihilus. Um. So the Emperor. So if I were to compare the Emperor to a like modern day government or whatever, basically the Emperor is the president of the Sith, and Nihilus is like a senator to the
You're
Sith.
saying you're not saying nihilist, are you? You're saying because I remember you mentioning the name. It's slightly different, isn't it?
Oh, Nihilus with an
Nihilist.
R.
Okay, that's what I
Um,
was saying. I remember it's something close though.
yeah. So Nihilus is like a senator, basically, but the Emperor basically has created a Dark Council, and there's Dark Council members.
Sounds
Um,
bad.
so Nihilus is one of those members, and there's also other ones. Blah blah blah. Well, uh, Scourge is like he he is best to be compared as a foot soldier for the Sith that has aspirations of becoming a senator.
Okay.
Um, so um, so anyways, Nihilus and Scourge are on this planet before Revan shows up, and they see that the planet is void of life, blah blah blah, and that's where you learn that the Emperor basically was testing his own abilities and drained the life out of that planet just for fun, basically. And as Revan's showing up, they shoot him down. He's caught off guard, and he ends up becoming a prisoner.
I remember this too. I think
Yeah,
you said this stuff a different day though. That's why I didn't have notes.
yeah. So he becomes a prisoner. Oh my gosh, I am getting trampled in this game. Although, but
Goku is going crazy with the transformation right now. That's all I hear in the background.
he becomes a prisoner to Nyrus and Scourge. Um, and then from there is a 3-year time jump. And if you remember, uh, from before, I mentioned how Revan, uh, oh man, what's his name? Um, Malik, and there was a third person with them. Her name is Mitra, and Mitra was during the time that Malik, Revan, and Mitra were together. There was the Mandalorian War, where the man, that generator that we talked about.
Oh yeah, the Dark Shadow generator or something like that.
Yes, the Dark Shadow generator exploded on the Mandalorian planet, and the loss of life was so large that because Mitra was so close to it and she felt everybody's death, she cut herself off from the Force. Well, what's up, Ben? Yeah, we're talking about Star Wars. But
Ben always pops up when Star Wars is being talked about. Always.
uh but yeah, so Mitra was the one that was close, and the only way to save herself and her own psyche was to cut herself off from the Force so that she didn't feel all the death surrounding her. Perfectly timed. Yep, perfectly timed, Ben. Um, so, um, within this 3-year time jump of Revan being abducted by the Sith, Mitra came back to the Jedi. Not only that, but a whole other war happened, um, to where the Sith came and attacked the Jedi Council directly, and Mitra was basically the head of the military that pushed back the Sith and saved the Jedi Council. So now she's a war hero, all over again. And she goes to Bastila, which is Revan's wife, and Bastila is like, I can feel that Revan's still out there, blah blah blah. And Mitra's like, look, I can feel it too. Bastila is like, look, here's I think his name's T3, which is basically Revan's R2D2. Here's T3. He was with Revan when his ship was crashed and he was abducted. And then Bastila's like, you go out there, you find him, I trust you, but also take this holocron of all of our son's birthdays that he missed, and then also take this mask with you, which is Revan's old mask. And basically she tells him, or Bastila tells Mitra, give him this mask. I kept it from him because I was worried about if he was in possession of it again, if it would bring out that darker side of him and then I would lose him forever. So take this mask in case you need it. And then if he does, if he does get consumed by darkness, take this holocron with you to bring him back. So Mitra's like, of course, I'll take it, blah, blah, blah. She goes out to find him. She goes to the planet that's void of life. She doesn't really find anything, except for I don't remember what she finds, but she ends up getting information to go to the planet that Revan is being held prisoner on. But we'll switch over to Revan's perspective. So Revan has been in custody to the Sith for 3 years straight.
Being tortured.
Being tortured. And the first few months of him being tortured, Nyrus was like, we're going to get this information out of him, blah, blah, blah. Scourge, I know that you're really good with torturing people to get information, so you're going to lead it, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no problem. Like, we'll take all the time we need. This guy's super strong on the Force, so it might take me longer than most because of his will, blah, blah, blah. Well, after all this time, 3 years later, Nyrus is no longer interested in Revan. She does not believe that she'll ever get information out of him. They're basically holding him because of just how strong he is. And Scourge and Revan start to form a Stockholm bond in a way, where they understand, like, they're not really friends, but after 3 years of being around somebody every single day, like,
yep.
you start to kind of just like
associate with them.
Yeah. So Revan is always sedated just enough so that he's awake and responsive, but not able to connect with the Force. And so Scourge is like asking him all these questions, blah blah blah. Like, are you gonna talk today? And Revan's just kind of like, you know me. Like we've went through this for 3 years straight now. Like, how's your day going? Basically, like he's not answering him. He's basically just like, oh, you look stressed today. And Scourge is like, I'm not here to talk about that. And he's like, okay, well, when you do want to talk, you know where to find me. And yeah, but so it gets to a point where Revan starts talking about how. Oh, hold on, let me pull up my YouTube chat. I forgot I was even streaming for a second, but Revan starts talking about how he can feel it in the Force that something is going to happen to where he will no longer be a prisoner anymore. And Scourge is like, oh, well, like, how do you know that? Blah, blah, blah. And Revan basically tells Scourge, like, the information that you know strictly from the dark side perspective only scratches the surface of like what the Force can offer. And like that kind of like leaves a small itch in the back of Scourge's head of like, oh, like this guy I've been torturing for information for 3 years might be able to teach me something. And eventually Revan just basically says like, no, like the Force has told me that like somebody's coming to save me, so I'm not going to be here too much longer. And so Scourge is like, oh man, like whatever, and like walks away. Ends up like stopping his visits because he's basically gotten to a point where he knows physical torture won't do anything to Revan anymore. The only torture that he can really give Revan is just pure isolation. So if he stays away from him for like 2 weeks, he knows that that does more damage to him than anything physical that he can do. So Scourge stays away. Hold on. Ben, we are talking about the story of Revan, the first book of Revan, in a game just told. Execute Order 66. But so Scourge goes about his business, doing his own thing. And Mitra ends up landing on that planet, and she has a picture from the T3 droid that was Revan's, that was with him when it crashed, and that droid got a picture of Scourge kidnapping Revan. And so she's going around asking information. It'd be undercover, of course. But she's like, look, do you know this man? Blah, blah, blah. She ends up coming across somebody that knows Scourge because he's also... The person that she comes across is also part of the Sith Alliance, whatever. So that guy goes to Scourge and is like, look, there's some lady here. She's asking about you, blah, blah, blah. It might be somebody from your past that you were just sloppy and somebody saw your face, and now somebody's daughter or mother or whatever is looking for revenge. And he's like, oh, great. And so he tells the dude, like, go ahead and set up this meeting. We'll meet up in this cave, blah, blah, blah. He goes there. Mitra shows up. She's already sensing that it's bound to be an ambush. She's already prepared for it. She kills people that are with Scourge. Scourge starts to like they're in the middle of a standoff, and he's like, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "I'm here to get back somebody that you kidnapped." And he like stops, like basically like frozen. He's like, and he says to her, "Revan was right." And she kind of like is taken back by it. She's like, "So you admit that you have Revan?" And he's like, Scourge just is like, he he told me that you would be here, and and like
And you're
he's just,
here.
yeah, he's just like, oh my gosh, like he wasn't lying, like blah blah blah. Anyways, they go through this whole like suspicion thing of like Mitra's basically like, how do I know that you're not trying to uh trick me, blah blah blah. Scourge is like, look, I'll take you to him, and and um I will like I'll take you to him so you can hear the truth directly from him, and we can move forward with something else, because I feel Revan only told me this information that somebody was coming to save you, because like the only way we can accomplish this mission of stopping the Emperor is to work together. Which I don't know if I told you, but basically Nyrus and the rest of the Dark Council that is going against the Emperor is going against him because the Emperor's plan is to attack the Jedi again. But they feel like the Emperor is like mentally unstable and just straight crazy. Because with the way that things are with the Sith right now at this time, they're too unstable to be able to hit the Jedi and win that conflict. But the Emperor's just like, nope, like this is the mission, this is what we're gonna do, blah blah blah. So Nyrus and the rest of the Dark Council are like, look, in order to like save the Sith, we have to stop the Emperor. Anyways, back to current storyline. Um, Scourge basically is like, look, like Revan told me this because he wants me to join you guys to stop the Emperor. That's the only reason why he would already let me know that somebody was coming to save him. And so they're like, oh well, I need more proof, blah blah blah. He's like, all right, give me 3 hours and I got you. And Scourge told Mitra, like, stay here. I'll be back in 3 hours. I'll be by myself. If you sense that somebody else is with me, you are more than welcome to escape, because you'll sense me from a mile away, and you'll have plenty of time to leave before I even get to this location. And she's like, all right. Scourge goes to the guy that told him that Mitra was looking for him, and he grabs dude by the neck, goes into the room that the dude has been staying in, and he kills him. Because he has a data pad of all of the names on that data pad. He has all the names of all the Dark Council members that are planning to go against the Emperor. And so Scourge, because he feels like he's not powerful enough to go against Nyrus directly, he takes the data pad of all the names and he goes to the Emperor to basically report them. And he's like, look, like I I've been trying to get as much information as possible. Basically just like trying to play it smart. Like I wasn't involved with them. I tried to play close with them just so I could get more information. But here's all the names of all the people that are planning to betray
Thinking
you.
ahead.
Yep. And man, when I tell you that the audiobook made this dude sound so intimidating, and it did not disappoint when it got to later in the story. But basically, when I said earlier of how the Emperor basically stripped the life of a planet just to test his own power or whatever, he stripped that planet of all life. And as he talks, there's like a reverb to his voice that signifies all the souls that he took from that planet now live within him.
That's dark.
Yeah.
Really cool though. It's a
Yeah.
cool little audio, like auditorial note
Yeah.
for use in the future for hopefully a movie.
And for context, if you do plan on looking it up later, this emperor's name is Vitiate.
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 Ah.
But spoiler to something I have to debunk of what I said earlier within my Star Wars expanding on, because before I said that Darth Sidious was the closest to getting to immortality. No, Darth Vitiate, he got it. Like he had immortality. This he was a reigning emperor for over 1,000 years, and that's just where the story's taking place now. His reign continues after this book. But anyways,
Is this the first mentioning of him that you've heard?
within the novelization, yes.
Okay.
But you can see him in the Old Republic games because he's the emperor in the Old Republic games. But so anyways, he goes to Darth Vitiate and he's like, here's the data pad of everybody that has betrayed you, blah blah blah. And Vitiate is like, look, I'll take your word for it, but if you're lying to me, like, you're going to have a fate worse than death. And Vitiate surrounds Scourge with this dark energy, doesn't even touch him, doesn't do anything physically to him, whether with his hands or with the Force. He just surrounds him. Like, he basically forms the Force around him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Kind of like a Force shroud.
Yeah, and Scourge can sense it, and he can sense, like, everything that the Emperor could possibly do to him. And it only takes, like, a split second of the Emperor doing that to him. But, like, every scenario, it's like the Tsukiyomi.
Okay.
Where it's
That's
like,
a really perfect. That's a good
yeah,
way of explaining it.
yeah, where it's like 70 years take place in the span of 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Scourge basically gets up and he's like, oh my gosh, like, I was planning on going against this guy. Like, good luck with me. Like, good luck to that. And he leaves, and he goes back to the cave. And, well, before he goes back to the cave, he talks to uh, Vitiate's commanding general, whatever. And he's like, when are you planning to attack? And she's like, soon. Just I'll let my people know to not harm you, but I do recommend that once you see that they're coming your way, you just skedaddle. And he's like, all right. And so he goes to Mitra back at the cave, lets her know, like, hey, the Emperor's going to take care of some things, and then we'll be free to plan whatever. Um, and then he also gives her a copy of the data pad to show her, like, these are people that are planning it. Like, I am one of the many people that were planning to overthrow the Emperor. So there's your proof that I'm not loyal to the Emperor and I'm willing to team up with Revan to take him down. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, I believe you. Now let's go get Revan. And he's like, okay. So he's like, well, you can't show up there like that. Basically has Mitra dressed as a slave so that they can get into the facility where they're holding Revan. As Scourge is heading to the facility, the the I don't know how to describe it, but like the officer in charge of like checking people in is like, hey, Nyrus has been asking for you. She hasn't heard from her servant, which is the guy that Scourge killed for the data pad. She's like, hey, she hasn't heard from her servant. Have you heard anything about that? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't keep tabs on him. He's his own person. Like, trying to keep up the Sith approach to how a Sith would answer that question. And he's like, all right, well, Nyrus is here, so you might as well check in with her. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right, no problem. They get into the building, and he turns to Mitra, and he's like, this is a problem. Like, if I don't go see her now, that's automatic suspicion, and that's going to ruin any chance of us following through with this plan. And she's like, well, I don't care what you do, but I'm getting Revan. And he's like, all right, well, we'll have to figure something out. But before anything can happen, boom, Emperor's whole fleet shows up to wipe out Nyrus and all of her people. Scourge and Mitra are like, well, screw any plans. We just gotta make a beeline straight to Revan, get him out. And Scourge is like, because I guarantee you, Nyrus's first order to her people weren't to fight off the Emperor's people, it was to kill the prisoner. And so they hurry up, they run to Revan's cell. Little do they know, there's already 2 guardsmen that have made it into his cell. Mind you, he's drugged, has no lightsaber, no means of defending himself, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of the guardsmen are in there, and he's young, and he's hesitant to kill an unarmed man. And the second guardsman is like a commander, like he's had some years under his belt. And he's like, look, you got to do it. Nyrus ordered this. We got to do it. And Revan's like, look, let me go and no harm will come to you, and I'll make sure that you are protected. They're like, oh, yeah, right, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, like, I promise you, like, I'm a Jedi. And that changes their whole perspective. They're like, oh, you're a Jedi. So, like, you have to stick to your word of, like, protecting us if you say you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, okay. So they open the door, and as they open the door, Nyrus is right there. And she cuts down the 2 guardsmen And as she cuts him down, Scourge and Mitra show up. Mitra's staying at the doorway to make sure no other guards people get in there. As they're fighting, as Scourge is fighting Nyrus. Nyrus is very easily overpowering Scourge with Force Lightning, her sword combat skills, all this, all that.
All
And
of it.
so she basically has Scourge on his knees, about to give him the final blow of Sith Lightning. And mind you, her Sith Lightning is so powerful that it can basically like burn the skin clean off of you.
Also, kind
So
of how I would imagine like Azula's from Avatar would be if it got a direct hit.
yeah. So seeing that Scourge is losing and about to die, Mitra uses her lightsaber, cuts the display by the door to have it shut on its own without her having to guard it. She runs into Revan's cell and she gives him his helmet. And as soon as Revan puts the helmet on, every single memory that he ever forgot came back to him.
Oh
So
man.
he remembers being a Jedi. He remembers being a Jedi pre-Sith. He remembers being a Sith, and he remembers the Jedi turning him from Sith to Jedi and wiping his memories all over again.
Dang.
As soon as he puts the helmet back on. And when I tell you, Nyrus is about to put the final blow on Scourge with her lightning, and Revan comes out. He walks out just casually with the helmet on, and Nyrus just like is so scared, goes to attack him, and Scourge, being a full out Sith Lord, was having trouble. Revan comes out, blocks her lightning with one hand, and reflects it back to her,
Dang.
killing her instantly.
Wow.
And Scourge just gets up and he's like, oh my gosh, this guy could take down the Emperor. Like, I picked the right side. And you notice a mood shift within Revan, because Revan was like a very very quippy character without his mask, and now that he has it on, he's a very cold, to the point, like
Very concise.
yes, like Scourge gets up, basically like can gathers himself, and he's like, I still have some other stuff to do. And Revan's like, all right, well, when you come back, bring food and water and a new set of clothes, because I've been in these clothes for 3 years straight and I'm hungry. And like Scourge is like, yes, like basically like, yes sir, like I got you. And so Revan and Mitra go back to the cave where Mitra's been basically made a safe house at. And Mitra notices like the shift in mood, but also she notices that ever since he put the mask on, he hasn't taken it off. And I guess from what the book basically said is that Mitra, like, the mask was before Revan even was a Sith. Like, the mask was just like a Revan thing. Because she says, like, from when she studied under Revan, like, she knew him as the guy with the mask. And seeing him without the mask in his cell was, like, weird to her. But now, him having the mask, like, he is now familiar but his attitude is unfamiliar to her. And so they get to the safe house. Revan basically looks at Mitra, who's still in her like slave attire. He's like, don't you want to change? Like, I'm sure that you're not comfortable in that. You might as well change back into your Jedi robes." And Mitra thinks to herself, like, don't you want to take that mask off? And but she doesn't say it to him. But so she changes back into her Jedi attire, and she notices that Revan's kind of like uh, by himself in a corner, kind of sulking. Um, and so she's like,
Did they use that term sulking?
no, they didn't use that term, but it was basically like he was brooding, I think is what they used it for. Um,
Hmm.
he was kind of just like in the corner, just being very stern, very cold, very emotionless. Um, and so Mitra comes up to him and she's like, "I have another thing that I uh I need to give you." And he's like, "What?" And she gives him a holocron, and he presses play, and Bastila is basically like, Bastila in the recording is like, "I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I figured that you'd want to share your son's uh, birthday with him, even though you're gone." And she's like, "I know you weren't here to name him, but I went ahead and named him." Let me look up what it is so I don't get it wrong.
Inavar.
Uh, Vanir.
Vanir. Okay.
Yeah. So she's like, "I know you weren't here to name him, uh, but I went ahead and named him for both of us. I named him Vanir." And she's like, "Because I always I want him to grow up knowing that even if you aren't here, that his father is always going to be a part of his life."
Yes.
Yeah, and that and uh, they started like basically she was just like saying happy birthday to him, and then she told Vanir like, wave at the camera, say hi to dad, and that you miss him and love him. And like little toddler says it back. Little toddler says it to a camera to his dad, and it immediately breaks him out of that trance of like falling back into the dark side. And there's just a single tear that falls out of his helmet. And Revan completely changes his attitude when talking to Mitra, and basically tells Mitra like, "I'm really proud of the Jedi that you've become. Like, I knew you didn't you cut yourself off from the Force, blah blah blah. I owe you everything for saving me." Mitra's like, "No, like you don't owe me anything. I owe you for the teachings that you gave me." And Revan's like, "Well, we'll just call it even then." And she's like, she chuckles and she's like, "Yeah, like we'll just go ahead and do that." And then Revan's like, "Do you want to come here and watch this video again with me? It'll make this video um even better to watch it with a friend." And it just like was a really emotional scene between them two. And it just like it brought back Revan from his like pit that he was falling in. Um, and later on, Scourge comes back like 4 hours later, and Revan's still replaying the video of his wife and his son.
Of
And
course.
uh, Scourge comes in and he's like, "Who's that?" And Revan's like, "It's my family." And so Scourge sits down and talks to him, and he's like, "So, like, what's your plan with the Emperor?" Blah blah blah. He's like, "Look, like, we need to stop him. This and that. Like, I have a plan." And uh, Scourge ends up having a Force vision, but he doesn't know exactly what a Force vision is because Sith aren't supposed to have that. Um, so he's like questioning Revan. He's like, but he doesn't want to be too direct because Scourge's Force vision is them failing and dying at the Emperor's feet. Um, so he asks Revan like, what is a Force vision? Uh, Revan basically says it's a it's a threat of the future that the Force wants you to be aware of, whether to plan on happening or to plan on avoiding or whatever. And Scourge is like, so, um, was that a Force vision that you had of Mitra coming to save you? And Revan's like, oh, to be completely honest with you, I lied to you back in the cell saying that somebody was coming to save me. I was hoping that me saying that would plant some seed of doubt in your head so that
What?
you would break me out.
Oh my.
And he's like, so it was just pure coincidence? And he's like, yeah, kind of. And he's like, uh, honestly, what's that?
Yeah. In Star Wars lore, that's true.
Yeah. And so Revan's like, actually, after I told you that, the night after I told you that information, I actually really did have a vision that somebody was coming to get me, but I wasn't sure uh, when it was happening or when it was going to start. And Scourge is just kind of like, well, this isn't really helpful, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so the Force vision isn't uh, definite. And Revan's like, well, the future is always forever changing. So the Force is never totally correct, but it's always letting you know what's ahead in some way, shape, or form. And he's like, so is your plan to go to the Emperor and kill him? Blah, blah, blah. Revan's like, yeah, but. And Scourge is like, so you're confident that you're powerful enough to strike him down? And Revan's like, I won't know. We won't know until we get there. Um, the best the best case scenario, we strike him down, and we no longer have to worry about him ever again. Um, but another way we could stop him is to just delay him for a future generation to come and stop him. And Scourge is like, oh, so you're just trying to buy time, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, like, I want to be able to do it because I don't want my family to have to deal with the repercussions of him ruling. And he's like, um, Revan basically tells Scourge, but if it also comes down to it, I'm willing to lay down my life if that means buying a decade to 2 decades for somebody else to take my spot of going up against the Emperor and having a better chance. And he basically explains to Scourge, like, as strong as the Emperor gets, the Force will always balance itself out to bring
True.
somebody just as strong on the light side to go against him. And so they discuss it a little more. Scourge still is very questionable about the whole thing. Revan's basically like, just trust in the Force. Um, and I think it's like 3 or 4 days later, they they end up going back to the planet. Well, they go back to the area at which they broke out Revan, because now the Emperor is there. Well, his ship got moved there, whatever, and that's where his throne's at. And so they go there. Scourge basically tells Revan, like, keep a low profile. We're gonna get into the throne room, and that's where we'll attack. And so they go into the Emperor's lair, basically, and right outside the throne room is the Emperor's commander. Well, Revan sees her and automatically recognizes her as being somebody that led him and Malik to the Emperor, because you find out that the Emperor, the Emperor firsthand, like, manipulated and used the Force to turn Revan and Malik to the dark side. Like, he basically made them his own agents. And so as Revan comes in, he sees the commander and he's like, oh, I recognize her. And if I recognize her, she's definitely going to recognize me. And Scourge is like, look, I'm here to see the Emperor, blah, blah, blah. And the commander's like, you can go in there, but these two with you can't. And Revan's facing the wall, not even facing the commander, because he doesn't want to be noticed. And Scourge is basically like, no, like, I'm going in there with them. I have information that the Emperor wants, blah, blah, blah. And the commander's like, no, you can go, but they can't. And they open the door, and Revan goes to, like, step towards the door to walk in with Scourge. And the commander puts her hand on his shoulder and pulls him to keep him away from the door. But as she pulls him, he faces her. And immediately she just yells, they're assassins, blah, blah, blah. And it's a full-out fight.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a full-out fight. Scourge goes... where does Scourge go? Scourge fights the commander. Mitra fights the guards. Revan goes straight for the Emperor. He runs in, goes straight for the Emperor.
About it.
The Emperor has a guard in there, and so as Revan's fighting the guard, the Emperor's just chilling in his chair, and he's like amused that Revan's back. And he's like, oh, Revan, like, you've returned. And Revan beats the guard, starts going straight for the Emperor. The Emperor shoots one lightning bolt from one finger, and Revan basically holds his lightsaber up to block it, and it stops him in his tracks because of how strong it is. So he can't advance anymore. Well, within that 1 second of him blocking it and his advance being stopped, the Emperor basically, like, gets up to him and they start fighting. He shoots more lightning. Revan blocks it. And then the Emperor starts, like, building up dark side energy to shoot one huge bolt at Revan. And Revan decides to do the same thing that he did with Nyrus, and he starts to collect energy. But because of his background, he's collecting both light side and dark side energy at the same time. And so when the Emperor fires off his uh, lightning, uh, it's difficult, but Revan deflects it back to the Emperor, and it strikes the Emperor in the chest. And like, it's the first time that anybody around the Emperor ever heard him, like, writhe in anger from pain. And it just, like, it's like the Emperor goes into straight Spartan rage. And it's just bad all around. He shoots lightning at Revan, and this just shows how strong Revan is, because Revan's getting electrocuted. T3, his droid, comes up to, like, shock the Emperor, to, like, distract him. And the Emperor, like, basically swipes the droid away with lightning and disintegrates the droid.
Dang.
Like, straight metal, steel, all that, dust. Nothing anymore. And Scourge and Mitra come in, and they're, like, watching the Emperor attack Revan. And the Emperor uses the Force, pulls Revan up to him, uses the Force with his other hand, grabs Revan's lightsaber, and is about to cut him down. Mitra uses her lightsaber throws, and it knocks Revan's lightsaber out of the Emperor's hand. And at this exact moment, the Emperor is, like, taken off, like, he's off guard, because he noticed that two people entered the room without him even noticing. So, and Scourge points out to Mitra, like, he was so not focused on you. You should have aimed the lightsaber for him, not just the lightsaber. And Mitra's basically like, yeah, well, if I would have done that, it would have killed him, but he still would have had time to kill Revan. And so Scourge is like, whatever, like, we need to focus on the main mission, not trying to protect your friend. And so
not wrong, though.
Yeah, Mitra then starts to, well, Revan gets up, surprising everybody in the room. He gets up on his feet, uses the Force to call his lightsaber back to him, and he's basically standing guard to the Emperor again. And now, this time, Mitra, Revan, and Scourge are fighting the Emperor, all three at the same time. And Scourge basically tells him, like, you're no match. Like, we're way too powerful for you to take down by yourself. And the Emperor just responds with, you've yet to prove that yet. And he takes the light. How did it go down? I think he took the lightsaber using the Force only. He took Mitra's lightsaber from her hand, killed her without moving.
Oh.
Without moving, he just took it from her and turned it on her, killing her. And Revan sees her body collapse on the ground, and it opens him up to get attacked by the Emperor. The Emperor uses lightning, knocks him out. Scourge ends up going down on a knee, bowing down to the Emperor. And the Emperor's like, you better explain yourself. And Scourge is like, Scourge, being a Sith, chooses to save himself. And he's like, these two were also involved with Nyrus's plot to overthrow you. I had to get close with them and bring them to you so that I could bring their plans to light to you, blah, blah, blah. And the emperor's like, well, why didn't you mention them to me uh, when you brought me this information about Nyrus? He's like, well, at that time I didn't know. They didn't confront me until after I've already left. And he's like, well, why didn't you just cut them down when you had the chance? And Scourge is like, because they were way too powerful for me, so I brought them to you, knowing it would be easy for you to take care of them. And he's like, all right, well, and he points at Revan. He's like, well, prove yourself to me that you were actually wanting their deaths, and cut down Revan right now. Because, mind you, Revan's just unconscious. He's not dead from the lightning yet. So Scourge takes Revan's lightsaber, and it's like a, oh man, who was it in the Bible? I think like Abraham. It was like a whole Abraham thing all over again. Scourge takes the lightsaber, holds it up, and as he gets to like Revan's neck to slice, the Emperor uses the Force to stop the blade, like right at Revan's neck. And he's like, all right, you proved yourself. Like, you were willing to kill him. I don't have any doubts that you would have done it. So, you don't have to do it. But we still have use for Revan. And Scourge is basically like, look, I'm tired of being involved with these internal plots within the Sith. Like, I need some kind of compensation, blah, blah, blah. And the Emperor's like, oh, don't worry, like, you'll get compensation. Like, we're going to reform the Dark Council, and you'll be the first one on there. Actually, you'll be in charge of everybody, and you'll be my personal guard conducting my bidding personally. So if
talk about a level up.
Yeah, he's like, if no matter where you go, whatever you tell people, they can basically take it as being from my mouth directly. And he's like, all right. And they end up sending Revan to a classified area, like somewhere in the galaxy, that not even Scourge finds out. And it's basically like assumed that the Emperor is turning Revan to the dark side again, by sending him away to a undisclosed location. And the Emperor basically tells him, like, you're going to work for me now, blah, blah, blah. And Scourge accepts the fact that from this point on, Revan is on his own, because Scourge can't ask the Emperor where Revan will be. He can't go on his own volition and try to look for him, because if he gets caught, then the Emperor will know that he was on Revan's side to begin with. So he basically has to come with terms, like, if Revan's meant to escape and go back against the Emperor, then he will. And Scourge accepts the fact that his mission now is to stay as close to the Emperor as possible, to figure out every strength, every weakness, every opening, every fault that he has, so that once the opportunity comes up again for them to strike him down, that he will be the most knowledgeable. And he mentions to the Emperor, he's like, well, he basically says to the emperor, like, I'm willing to stay. I'm willing to do your bidding and guard you and do this job for as long as you wish for my services. And the emperor's like, are you sure of that? And he's like, yeah. And the emperor uses the force to turn uh Scourge immortal.
Oh gosh.
And basically the process of turning him immortal involves basically like burning his like force essence in a way. Like he can still use the force and whatnot, but like there's like a force ghost energy that is within every force user. Um, but so he basically turns Scourge immortal, and Scourge is like disabled because turning immortal basically shut down his motor functions because there's just this overwhelming burning sensation. And Scourge tells the Emperor, like, I can't move, blah, blah, blah. And the Emperor's like, this is the price of immortality. He's like, give it a few years and you'll be able to adjust to it, and give it a few more decades and you'll be able to move twice as better as you were today. And so basically he's telling him, like, you're immortal, but it's going to take you 30 years to be able to do anything with that immortality.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it just, and that's basically how it ended. It's like
Wow.
Scourge is an immortal guard to an immortal emperor, studying him, waiting for somebody else to challenge the emperor so that he can stand with them to strike him down. Revan is now a prisoner to the emperor again. Oh,
Again.
actually, I forgot to mention this. Revan is a prisoner to the emperor again, but as he's a prisoner, he gains a small amount of consciousness to feel in the Force that Mitra is still around him. She's dead physically, but
Okay, that's what I was about to ask.
her Force essence is still watching over him.
Okay.
And basically what she's doing is as they're trying to brainwash him, she's giving up her Force presence little by little to keep him conscious of the Revan that he is. So basically when they try to brainwash him, like she gives him like a tenth of her energy to keep him in the now.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's only limited amount because
Yeah,
once
we don't know
she's,
how long that'll last.
yeah. So
But we do know how long it'll last as long as her force presence will last.
yeah.
Because it's a trade-off, so yeah.
Yeah. But every time she uses it, it cuts back on her presence.
Yes.
So yeah, that's basically where it's ended. We don't the next book to the story is not like, it's not like called Revan Book 2. It's something completely different.
Probably the Empire, the Emperor's Tale. That's what it turned into at the end there. The
Yeah,
tale of
it's,
the all-powerful Emperor.
yeah. And yeah, Darth Vitiate actually has a crazy story to him. I still have yet to figure out why, but at some point in his story, he ends up basically taking over the body of a human, and having, I think, 3 sons, and then that story goes crazy because basically he sends 2 of his sons to war, and he's like, look, you go here, you take over this planet, don't leave any survivors, blah blah blah. As they're on that planet, one of them gets injured and has a bunch of prosthetics, to help him survive. And once he returns with those robotic prosthetics, Vitiate basically kind of just doesn't even acknowledge him as his son. And like a few years later, he basically tells his 2 sons that only one of you can rule, so you guys got to just figure this out. And
Up to you guys. Figure it out, guys. Figure it out, sons.
yeah, the one with the robotics, he's like jealous of his other brother because he feels like their father is like favoring him, and saying without saying it, basically telling his son like, hey, you're gonna get it, we just gotta get your brother on board with the fact that he just needs to give up the thought of him ever ruling.
Give up the throne.
Yeah.
More like
so they start sparring, just regular practice, him and his brother. And the brother without any robotics, he wins the spar. And they win it in front of their father. Or he wins it in front of their father. And the brother without prosthetics like helps the brother with get back on his feet. He kind of gives him like a brotherly like chuckle, like, hey, like, good fight, blah blah blah. Starts to walk away. The jealous brother, out of anger, throws the lightsaber at his brother. And mind you, they have many fights before, and his brother's always blocked it. Well, this time he caught him completely off guard, and as he threw the lightsaber, his brother didn't block it, and it ended up killing him. And so the brother with prosthetics killed the brother without, and he holds his brother's lifeless body in his arms, and he starts crying. And the father comes down from the like overseeing balcony, and for the first time ever, like, acknowledges his son. And
wow.
He's like, good job. Like, you used your anger and your fear to channel the dark side, and you did what you had to do. And yeah, it's just that story.
The dark side is such a trip, man.
Yeah.
Like, holy smokes. They should have started.
What's
there
that?
There is?
Yeah. I was about to mention, like, they made a CGI short film of that story on for the Old Republic video game. You can find it on YouTube. It's like one of the highest watched trailers of Star Wars ever.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. But, like, in that trailer, Vitiate is like in a human body. But Vitiate is actually a Sith, which in the Old Republic, the Sith were not only just the religion of Sith, but the Sith religion or the Sith race, which is like
Oh,
red
okay.
skin with like tendrils. So yeah. So if you ever look up Vitiate on Google, you'll see like 3, maybe 4 different versions of him because he's
Hmm.
just taking over people's bodies. But the red skin version of him is like the actual version of him. But yeah, that's where the book ended. I got to figure out what the sequel is because I looked it up and it turns out that either Revan was put into a hyperbolic time chamber type of thing or like cryogenically frozen or maybe given some immortality of some kind because uh, I looked it up after I finished the book and something said something about uh, Revan 300 years later. And I was like,
Wow.
what? So the
So
next
my
time
thing
we hear,
is like
go ahead.
how far how much is known about Revan? Like obviously your knowledge only goes so far. Like,
Hmm.
but do we have like a full life and death of Revan to date?
Yes,
Or okay, cool, cool.
there is a life and death of Revan. Um, Revan is
I was just
probably
hoping this was like coming out now because I was gonna be like, this is gonna suck if this is all like weekly information. This is like a manga for me. This is gonna be a blow.
so the pre pre Disney buyout. Revan's story was done, but
Okay,
with Disney being in charge, they have yet to really reference Revan in a major way, so they could completely change it. They could
got
make
it.
him this immortal being that's still alive, just on the outside, blah blah blah. Like, but within the Star Wars Legends continuity, uh, Revan lived and he died.
Got it.
Um, Revan was, well, still is. Screw ChatGPT, but Revan is like the most popular character of the Old Republic.
Well, I'm
Because
here for it.
he had a very um, Anakin esque type of story of being good, going bad, then returning to being good.
Yeah, I like that about him.
Hmm.
Still no nihilist, but hey, he's getting there.
Oh, and I did look it up. I know I mentioned it on stream, uh, on your stream the other day, but let me see if I can find it again.
Oh, about nihilist and the shadow generator thing.
Yes. So,
I was gonna ask that question as well.
uh, oh my gosh, where is it? Uh, I wrote it down somewhere. Okay. Nihilus was killed during Revan's time and was in fact indirectly created by Revan.
Huh?
Because of the mass shadow generator exploding, that was
Hmm.
uh, Darth Revan was in charge of that battle that led to the mass shadow generator exploding. So him deciding to attack the base that the generator was on, knowing the kind of damage that it would do to the planet that it was on, him deciding to attack it anyways, indirectly created Nihilus.
Okay.
Um.
So
Oh.
nihilist just was non-existent before. all. It wasn't like the person formerly known as Nihilus. So Nihilus is really just like a created being from
Well,
nothing. Like who did he?
Nihilus was
Was it
Nihilus was a human on the planet that the generator exploded on. But
that?
the
Makes sense.
generator exploded and created Nihilus from that human.
So okay, so Nihilus is a completely different identity that was born, but there was a person that had its own identity before it.
Exactly. It's
Got it.
like how do I explain it? It's like the opposite of like Kid Buu. It's like as if Oob was a person that turned into Kid Buu,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
I think I roughly get it.
Okay. Um,
Because for the longest I thought because like just the way that Nihilus' powers and everything sound, Nihilus sounds like an ethereal being that's been around for like millennia. Like it's
well,
out there devouring planets and stuff like that. And
yeah. So basically he was a human that was in the explosion, but his his anger for being killed in the explosion and stuff, like it kept his presence alive in the force.
okay,
Like it was something that wasn't supposed to happen. That's why he's known as the wound of the force,
hmm,
because it's like the one time that the force kind of effed up. like um but yeah, the reason why I'm convinced that something happened with Revan to where, because the full quote that this um, article is saying is Nihilus was killed during Revan's time. It was in fact indirectly created by Revan, but Revan was kept in stasis for 300 years, and and so yes, he did live through Malgus time. I don't know who Malgus is yet. Excuse me, I keep burping. I'm having adult beverages. Sorry.
that's why the burpees got the
Uh,
belchies.
did did
Belchies.
Darth Revan and Nihilus ever meet? Nihilus never fought Revan, though he did fight Mitra. Oh, who's Mitra? Oh my gosh. Oh, Mitra is
That's the one
Mitra.
from the
Yeah,
story.
yeah. I spelled it differently in my notes because I wasn't sure how to spell it. So when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, who's that?" But yeah,
New character unlocked.
yeah. So he did fight Mitra. Okay, that's interesting. He lost, but mostly due to her being a. Oh, she was a wound in the Force too. He lost, but mostly due to her being a wound in the Force and him trying to drain her, which led to him becoming weaker. Oh, interesting.
Now they're saying the wound of the force. Now it's sounding like there's been multiple. I thought it was
Well,
like the super
I think,
special title. What? I'm sure it is, but
yeah, I think anybody that survived that generator explosion is, I mean, it would only be Mitra and Nihilus because nobody else was close enough to it. Because
yeah.
Revan and oh my gosh, why do I keep forgetting his name? Malik. Revan and Malik were further away from the explosion than Mitra was. I'm guessing Nihilus was like on the planet because Mitra was in a ship, but the ship was just really close in proximity. Um, who is stronger, Revan or Nihilus? Revan is stated to be more powerful than Nihilus in the Force, but that doesn't matter in a fight with him. In fact, it's a problem. Nihilus becomes more
Yeah, it
powerful
was Nihilus
based.
would just eat them.
Yeah, Nihilus becomes more powerful based on his opponent's strength. He used his Force drain on Visla after he had been weakened by the exile's wound in the Force. Hmm. Could Revan beat Kylo Ren? Of course he could. Get out of here. Okay.
What guy made of?
Ooh.
Did you
And
find
to
a
speak
forum
on...
that's giving you questions and stuff?
No, I
Or
haven't. I meant to write down the hot takes that your chat GPT was talking about, but I do remember a few of them. And one of them was that the prequels were actually good and blah, blah, blah. And to that, I want to say I do think the prequels were good. The dialogue issues and whatnot were actually George Lucas's fault because he does not know how to direct people. And so he wanted everybody to kind of like he directed what's his name? Oh my gosh, Hayden Christensen, aka Anakin Skywalker. He directed Hayden Christensen to kind of play as this annoying person that you just wanted to be like, oh my gosh, stop whining. Like he directed him to play in that manner, which people didn't like. So I feel like everything that the people say like the is wrong with the prequels, it has nothing to do with the actors per se. It just has to do with the director that directed the movies didn't know how to direct. And then the hot take of saying that The Last Jedi is actually a good movie and people are just joining the hype train of hating it, blah blah blah. No, no, that it deserves the hate that it gets
Is that
because
the one with Mark Hamill at the end, like coming back as Luke Skywalker?
no, that one is Force Awakens. The Last Jedi is the one
Oh, okay.
where Mark Hamill is quote unquote training Rey.
Oh, so
But
this one comes after that one, that movie?
yes,
Okay.
and it's so not Star Wars in so many different ways. At least not mainline Star Wars. It would have been a good Star Wars movie if it didn't have main Star Wars characters. Like if it was a spin-off story of being like, oh, this is something that happened within the Star Wars universe
Like
that
Rogue
would have
One? How that
yes,
was like its own thing?
exactly. Then it would have been a good movie. But if you are attaching Han Solo and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker and Chewbacca and all these people, the Star Wars or the Skywalker family to it, I was just like, no. Like, especially going from Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, it's just like, okay, well, Force Awakens is following too strongly of the Star Wars formula, and then Last Jedi is just averting completely from that formula. It's just like, I don't know. So I definitely feel like it deserves the hate it gets because they try to fit so much into uh, the last movie to fix everything that the Last Jedi did, and it just made it really complex and convoluted and whatever. Because there was a direction that the three movies were supposed to go, but for some reason in movie 8 they decided to switch the director to Ryan Johnson, and Ryan Johnson was quoted to say, quote, Ryan Johnson was quoted in saying he had a script written out for a standalone Star Wars movie, presented it to Disney, and they're like, "Oh, well, you should just like integrate the mainline characters into it." And that's just what he did. He just character swapped from his own unique characters to the mainline story, and just they just went ahead with it. And it's like, that's so stupid. Because all the character motivation that was seeded in Force Awakens was just thrown out the window in The Last Jedi. And then in Rise of Skywalker, they tried to reintegrate the seeds that were 2 movies ago. It just didn't work.
So it was also, it sounds like a big thing was it was poor, the movies were poorly planned
Yeah.
amongst one another.
Yeah.
Almost as if they didn't know another movie was going to be after the other ones were coming out.
Well, so what
Because
J.J.
the themes
Abrams
don't
did.
sound like they matched at
Yeah.
all.
So what J.J. Abrams did, because he was the director on Force Awakens, he made the movie, and he basically like made a storyboard of like, hey, this is the character motivations, this is the character arc that these characters are planning to, or I'm planning for them to have. And Ryan Johnson comes into the next movie and he's like, I don't want that. I don't want them to have those motivations. And so he created his own, and then they brought Ryan Johnson back for the next movie after that. And they're like, all right, well, we need you to fix this. And he's like, well, I already had a plan for these characters, so I guess I just have to stick with my plan. And basically what he did, and this is like the thing that irritates me the most, and it makes the movie so inconcise now to try to watch them in order, is because 7 plants seeds, 8 uproots everything about those seeds and plants its own, and then 9 retcons everything that happens in 7 to reestablish what happened in, or retcon everything that happened in 8 to reestablish what happened in 7. And it just makes it so confusing. Of like, because like if you watch it now all the way through, you're like, well, why'd I even watch Last Jedi if none of that matters anymore? It's just annoying.
That's definitely telling me that I'm not going to be watching Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I think I'm good on the newer things, or the
Yeah.
sequels, I guess is what they're called.
Like it's a good movie to watch by itself. It's not a good movie to watch to be like, all right, it's time to connect these dots. No, because it's not going to connect any dots. It's just going to give
Yeah,
you more questions.
for me, if it's not a good Star Wars movie, like even if it was I'd say if it was a 6.5, like, and things were flowy more than anything, like that's the most important thing, then I would be
Yeah.
down with that. I can watch a bad movie as long as the story flows. You know, the story doesn't have to be great, but as long as
Yep.
it flows, I'm cool with that. I can do that.
Yep.
Because it still adds more knowledge to the verse, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to understand that information if it's given to you with a poor pacing of a story, or poor
Yeah.
development of a story, actually. Not pacing.
Like, I'm one of the rare people within like the Star Wars fandom that actually doesn't mind watching Attack of the Clones. Like, that's one of the movies that has gotten a lot of hate over the years, is Attack of the Clones. I don't mind it. But The
Why
Last
is that, by
Jedi,
the way?
it's just really convoluted. And it relies really heavy on the green screen and blue screen CGI. And not too many people like it too much. And then also, um, it just there's a lot of questions that are asked in that movie that if you're just watching the movies aren't really answered. But if you watch Attack of the Clones and then watch the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series,
Mm-hmm.
basically all the questions that you have are answered.
Okay.
But I mean, that's a commitment because there's 7 seasons. But
Ooh,
Disney
goodness.
Plus has a playlist that they set up, and it's called Star Wars Clone Wars Essential Episodes, which is like it's like 25 to 30 episodes of uh, the essentials, basically. Like, hey, if you want to get the story but you don't want to watch 7 seasons of the story, here's the episodes to watch.
These episodes will give you that story.
Exactly. Um, like it explains how the clones came to be. Um, because in Attack of the Clones, um, Obi-Wan visits um, man, what's that planet name? I forget the name of the planet, but he visits the planet where the clones are created, and they greet him by the name of a different Jedi. And the Jedi that they greet him as is a Jedi that died like 20 years prior. And everybody prior to the Clone Wars animated series, they're like, why the heck are they calling him this? Blah, blah, blah. Like, this makes no sense. Well, it turns out in the animated series, they uncover the fact that um, Palpatine ordered the clones under a Jedi name, under a Jedi that he kidnapped, um, and he ordered them under his name. And the plan was for Palpatine to have those clones being made in private so that when Order 66 was ready to be established, that he would bring the clones into play. But the Jedi found them early, and then he had to kind of just let the Jedi um, take over the cloning um, department, whatever, and involve them with their army. So, um, and then also it the Clone Wars explains the whole how Darth Maul survived being cut in half, him having a brother, blah blah blah. Um, it explained how Anakin got the scar on his eye. Um, a lot of things. It was a really cool series, and I enjoyed watching it.
It's so crazy the amount of knowledge and mediums that Star Wars touches on to tell its universal lore.
Yeah.
Like I think I would say uh, I view Star Wars stuff similar to how I view One Piece. Like it's
Hmm.
just and obviously it's much more. I would say it's much more of a story told in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So
Star
I
Wars
think it'll
is
be
like.
amazing when they can put literally all of it in like movie format or like say cartoon format. Just translate
Hmm.
literally all of it, everything from a book to a movie to a commercial, everything that's canon. It'd be nice to see all fully fleshed out in like one media source. Even books, I think would work well for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, probably books would be the best.
Yeah. Star Wars is definitely a very is a very complex genre, or not genre, but franchise to follow fully because of how many books, how many different shows, how many different movies, all that. It's very much like if you were to compare it to a video game, like uh Star Wars is the Kingdom Hearts of uh sci-fi. It's like, oh
Yeah.
well, if you want the full story of Kingdom Hearts, then you have to play one, and then after that, play the DS only version of this game, and oh, and there's a pinball game of this that you have to play. Like Star
And
Wars
then you
is
gotta
very
beat
much,
your grandma in arm wrestling 3 times in a row.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very complex, but I find it very entertaining because like if you are really committed to it, like doing doing just like a minor sweep, chances are you're going to find a character within that minor sweep to where you're like, oh, I'm interested in knowing more about this character. And then you look into it and it's like, oh, this character has like a trilogy novel written about them. Like, I don't know. It's like you can find Revans all over uh, the Star Wars lore. Like
That's a good way of putting it.
my favorite character that doesn't really get too much shine. Um, other like if I were to say my number one character that isn't like main character status in the Star Wars franchise, would be Kit Fisto. I really like Kit Fisto. Kit
That's a
Fisto
cool
is
sounding name.
Yeah, Kit Fisto is he's in the prequels, and he's like he's like a Piccolo of Star Wars, to where it's like you look at him and you're like, you're not black, but I know you're black. Like
Uh-huh. You
he's
rocking with us?
he's known as I think his nickname is like the Smiling Jedi, because he like
I
in
think you
combat or
mentioned him
whatever.
to me before.
Yeah, he's just like he's always smiling, and I think
Dick
he's a Twi'lek.
Fisto.
I think his race is a Twi'lek, which is like an alien with two tendrils going out the back of his head. Let me look him up real quick. Kit Fisto um, was a renowned male. Oh, he wasn't a Twi'lek. He was a Neo Notalian. Natalian.
He's Italian.
uh,
Italian.
Jedi Master in the waning years of the Galactic Republic. In 41 BBY, he took Bant Aaron as his Padawan. He later trained Nadar Veeb as his Padawan to knighthood as well. So, whenever you look into um, Star Wars lore, um, if it ever says like in this case, it says in 41 BBY. BBY stands for Before Battle of Yavin, which is episode 4 of Star Wars A New Hope, where uh, where Luke Skywalker destroys the first Death Star. So Kit Fisto um, was around roughly 41 years before Luke destroyed the first Death Star.
Makes sense.
Um, but yeah, he's definitely one of the more interesting characters.
I mean, just based off the name alone, every time you say the name, I want to like hear a rock jingle or something pop up. Kid Fisto! Something cool.
Um,
Dang, they got again. Star Wars is the other thing aside from it just being having a lot, the lot that it has. You can find your own niches, whatever, however you say that word. You can find your
Niche.
own niche within Star Wars, um, if you want. Like certain characters have certain like
Hmm.
traits and personalities that kind of draw people and so on and so forth, which I
Yep.
really really like. Well,
And there's
it's a
so
very
many different
involving series. for sure.
Yeah. There's so many different factions too. Like if you don't really care for the Jedi, then you can read the books of um like Sith focused plots, or if you don't really care for the Sith and Jedi plots, then you can look into the Mandalorian plots, which the Mandalorians are really cool because they're basically just soldiers that stood up against both Sith and Jedi, and they had their fair share of wins and losses. Like they were how would I compare it? Um, hmm. I would say I don't really know how to. What's that?
Who?
Oh, Thrawn is crazy.
Let me
I've
write him
talked about
down so I
Thrawn so
can.
many times. Yeah, Grand Admiral Thrawn is who I told you about, Roby, before. Of like he was a very tactical person. He had no force abilities, but he was just like,
Yes,
yes,
I remember him.
he just like he would think like 5 steps ahead of everybody, and he would use species artwork to predict what they were gonna do in combat. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you have to read the or either read the books or listen to the audio books. He's such a savage. He found he was one of the few people that from just interacting with Darth Vader 3 times, he found out that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker.
I remember him. I remember you saying that now. I remember him. My
Yeah.
thing, I have a whole thing of notes from like other times we talk about Star Wars stuff, and I was
Hmm.
looking for it before we started this conversation, and I could not find it. I have no idea where it is. It's like 5 pages long.
Oh yeah. I'm not surprised with how much I go into like just rambling. Like, yeah.
Well, because I started doing it after I think I had asked you if it was a if like I asked you that's what it was. I had asked you one day if it was if you thought it was weird if someone takes notes about like people or things just so
Hmm.
they don't forget them. Because even though I was telling you how I think I have a good, really good memory, but wanting to know, even two people, you can get things mixed up, or like you
Yeah.
get small details, and like learning those small details, at least for people like me,
Hmm.
are really, really, really important. Because I know
Yeah.
if people know those small details about me, even if they wrote them down, and like I hear them mentioned a year down the road, and I'm like, well, you remember what? How do you remember that? What? Okay.
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff is huge. So I know I have those notes somewhere. Is ultimately what I'm saying, and I gotta find them.
Yeah.
But they are along that same time frame.
When it comes to Star Wars, like it's hard for me to really keep track of everybody's backstory and stuff unless, which is weird, but unless I write down their name. Because if I write down their name, for some reason it
Death Note.
triggers in my brain that I'm like, the only thing I need to write down is their name. And I just see their name and I'm like, all right, I'm already, like, my brain's already filled in the blanks of this person's story.
That's how your brain word associates things that way.
Yeah,
Names and descriptions.
yeah. And so, like I said earlier, like I wrote down the characters' names of everybody that popped into the Revan book. Like I literally have just 6 people's names written down, and that's the only thing I went off of to recap the rest of the book because I have Revan, Scourge, Nyrus, Mira, Bastila, and Cordova, and that's all I have written down in my notes. And yeah, but Thrawn's such a crazy, amazing character. Um, what's a? I'm trying to trying to say another feat that Thrawn had that was really impressive. Um, okay, so there was a plot in there was a plot in the books at where Han Solo, uh, oh my gosh, what's his name?
Come on, name
Uh,
guy, you got this.
hmm, and I gotta look it up, and I'm gonna be upset at myself when I see the name Han Solo friend Lando. Oh my gosh, Lando Calrissian. So Han Solo, Lando, and Leia knew that Thrawn was onto them and tracking them down. And so Lando's ship, which is called the Lady Luck, and then Han Solo's ship, the Millennium Falcon, um, Thrawn was trying to find Leia. Leia was on her way to Kashyyyk to lay low. Well, so Han got into the Millennium Falcon with C-3PO, and then Leia got into Lando's ship with Lando. And um, no. Uh, Han and Lando got into the Millennium Falcon, and then Chewie and Leia got into the Lady Luck. And the Lady Luck was heading to Kashyyyk. The Millennium Falcon was heading to some like random planet. And they programmed C3PO to mimic Leia's voice. And they sent um, a voice message to Coruscant to because they already knew that there was like a spy at Coruscant relaying information back to Thrawn. And so Leia got into the Lady Luck, C3PO got into the Millennium Falcon, and used Leia's voice to send a transmission to Coruscant saying, "Hey, I'm on the Millennium Falcon. We're heading to this planet, blah, blah, blah. We're going to be there for set amount of days." And that transmission was relayed back to Thrawn. And Thrawn listened to it for, I think he listened to it like twice. And um, his second in command, his name's Pelion. Pelion basically told him like, "Hey, if we're wanting to get Leia, like we need to go to this planet. They're going to be there in 3 days. We can get her. Blah blah blah." And Thrawn listened to it again, and he's like, "No, that's not Leia. It's probably it's what's that? Oh." He's like, "No, that she's not." He's like, "Nope, she's not on that ship. It's likely her protocol droid C3PO using her voice. Um, she's likely on the Lady Luck. They did a switcheroo as they were leaving the planet because they stopped they stopped their exit. Oh my gosh, what is going on with my phone? They're like they stopped their exit from the planet for their departure lasted 2 minutes longer than expected. Within those 2 minutes, that was long enough for them to switch from the Millennium Falcon to the Lady Luck and get going. Like he just like broke it all down, and he was like, and then there. So that means that if they're like that means that Lando is likely on the Millennium Falcon, and due to Leia not really having experience flying a ship too much, she has to have somebody else with her, which is likely uh which is likely the Wookiee. So that means that with her going with the Wookiee, that leaves only one place where they could go, which is Kashyyyk. So let's send some people to Kashyyyk, and sure enough, like that's where she was. I don't know. It's a lot cooler to hear it as he's describing it, but
No, it makes sense because it shows like his level of deductive reasoning.
hmm
He kind of sounds like sorry. He sounds a little bit like Batman.
oh yeah.
A little bit. Like that's how like prepared and knowledgeable he is. Like how they say Batman can take out anybody with planning.
hmm
Uh, this dude who figured out that Vader was Anakin. Like you said, so early on, and so after meeting him only so few times.
And he would
So
toy
yeah,
with them too. He he would tell Vader, he'd be like, "Oh, like I have to do this because uh I promised a while ago, I promised a Jedi Knight named Anakin Skywalker that I would conduct things in this manner." And Vader would be like, "Anakin Skywalker's dead." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, you told me, but I told him that I would do this." And it would like irritate Vader, and Thrawn was just basically like he basically just used deductive reasoning of like there's only one reason why this guy would be so sensitive at me bringing this guy's name up, and that's because he's him. I don't know. Vader's just so, or Thrawn's just such a impressive character. But um, I know it's been a while, but to bring back uh, the conversation of the Mandalorians, the oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He's also he's very combat efficient because um, Thrawn's from a race called the Chist, which is from the unknown regions, and the Chist are very their um, their culture is about ascension, so it's like the Chist ascendancy, and basically you don't get respect by the name of your family or your wealth or anything like capitalistic of any way. Um, you get respect due to your achievements. Like your achievements in battle and in life dictate your level of hierarchy within that culture. Yeah, I've always found that really interesting about Thrawn as well. And the thing is like that race itself is very dirty with how they do stuff. And Thrawn was so crazy with he was so dedicated, I should say, at ascending that he was exiled from the Chiss people. So like, oh man, this guy's too extreme for our extreme nature. Like, get him out of here. But yeah, he's a very interesting character. Um, but the but taking it back to the Mandalorian people is like the Mandalorian people are like within the US's like election process with how we have like swing states that can um, change the course of the election process and stuff. Like that's how the Mandalorians work for war. Like if the Jedi and Sith were at war with each other, and it was very like evenly fought and stuff, whichever side got the Mandalorians on their side, they automatically had the upper hand, and it was trouble for the other guys. And that was mainly because the Mandalorian people had a metal called Beskar, and Beskar was one of the few metals that cannot be penetrated by a lightsaber. The lightsaber just bounces off of it. Oh, hold up. What'd you say, Ben? What was his... Oh, it must have been an old chat. I don't know why it popped up like that. But yeah, Beskar is one of the few metals in Star Wars where a lightsaber can't penetrate it. It'll just bounce right off. You see you see appearances of Beskar in the Disney Plus Mandalorian show. Because even though there's not many lightsabers or anything in there, it also can deflect laser bolts. So if somebody's shooting at them and they're fully decked out in Beskar, that it's bouncing off of them. It's still hitting them. Like it's like a oh my gosh, why do I keep like a ballistic vest? Like you're still gonna feel that shot, but you have a higher chance of that ballistic vest kind of taking the main damage away from. Yeah, but
Makes
yeah,
sense.
is so yeah. There's Jedi, there's Mandalorians, there's the Sith, there's bounty hunters, there's there's spies, which could be on either side, or they could just be for their own purposes.
Independent.
Yeah. There's smugglers. There's the gray Jedi. There's the dark Jedi. And then I forget what they name them, but there's some people that are just like they're not Jedi or Sith. They're just in the middle. And they don't take any side or anything. They just follow the Force directly. But I forget what they name those. Which
Middle of the roader.
Ahsoka Tano becomes one of those types of beings, more or less.
Every time I hear that name, I only correlate it to Rosario Dawson.
Ahsoka Tano is such a cool character. Oh my gosh, this is already 12:30. Is that 12:30?
12:52, my G.
Oh my gosh! All right. I played one round of Rogue Company, and then I just been talking about Star Wars for the last 2 hours and 8 minutes.
Hey man, that's how it be. Sometimes that's how you got to get through the stream, dog.
But
I've just been perusing.
I finally have been able to update you on the Revan lore so far.
Finally caught up on Revan. I'm curious what the next saga will entail, but I'm gonna be patient. But
Yeah,
I'm very
I will
curious.
do.
But I like how it ended.
See, and that's what I like a lot about the Star Wars books. I'm not sure about the comics or anything, but the books, they never end on a final note. It's always just like, hey, like, this is a full galaxy. Like, there's always something going on.
Yeah.
And then it's never a rainbows and daisies ending. Even if it is a good ending, there's always something that's like, but that's not it, like type of thing.
Another confrontation laying in wait, or something else brooding and building and
Hmm.
starting to bustle. Yeah.
I think next, because I already know this character top to bottom. I don't need to re-listen to any audiobooks or anything. Next, I will give you the full rundown story of Darth Bane, and he's the one that started the rule of two, of there just being a master and apprentice instead of like a full out army of Sith. So I will definitely do the rundown on him. I feel,
I think I have notes on him too, because I remember we talked about him.
yeah,
Because we started off actually talking about Darth Bane, like with the whole entirety of our Star Wars conversation even starting,
hmm
and then it moved to Revan. Then you mentioned Nihilus, and then that's when you started talking about Nihilus. That's what piqued my interest, because I was specifically asking like what these characters, what some of these other old Republic characters do, this, that, and the third.
yeah,
And then once you started talking about Nihilus, I got hooked on him.
hmm
Um, so yeah, I remember that, but I don't remember everything about Bane. I do. I don't know. But I'm
yeah,
interested to get back to it. I wish I could find those notes. I gotta find the notes.
yeah. I've mentioned briefly about Bane because I didn't want to spoil anything, but like I I don't know. Bane's such an interesting character. Like Revan is definitely number one in my book, but Bane is number two. Um, especially for Old Republic, just because of his story and just
He's got a mask too, right? I think that was another thing we talked about. Is he's got like a partial mask or something?
he, yes,
Or
kind
there's
of.
something on his face, something like that.
Yeah, he ends up getting obelisks on him, uh, which is like a a parasite that kind of feeds into his anger.
Hmm. Yeah, because I
But
remember we definitely talked, uh, not just talked about him, but I looked him up. I looked
yeah,
up the character designs for him too. I just
yeah,
can't remember
and
fully what he looks like. I kind of
and
piece pictured him.
yeah, and some renditions of him depict him with like a mask, but from the books, he never had like a formal mask. So I've always found that weird because in the Clone Wars animated series, there's a small appearance by him, and he has a very like a um like Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat type of mask,
Hmm.
and it's like, that's not how it was in the books. So I'm just gonna stick with the book variation of him. Uh, I won't really talk about whatever Disney's been doing with him lately, if they've been doing anything with him lately.
We don't
But
talk about what Disney do.
yeah, no, because Star Wars Legends is more of a concise story, so I'll just stick with that. But I'm gonna hop off stream. I'll be back on tomorrow. Uh, hopefully, we can all get into a party chat again, talk it up. If
Yes,
not, then
sir.
definitely
Do you know what
next
you're going to
week.
be playing tomorrow? You have an idea?
Um, I think I'm gonna try to finish Sifu. I'll either do Sifu or continue with Assassin's Creed.
Okay. Sick. Sick. Well,
Uh,
that sounds good. I'm definitely, well, actually tomorrow's Saturday, so I might not be streaming tomorrow. Well, I'm not
okay.
supposed to stream tomorrow. I'm probably going to end up doing.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later. I'll probably hop in your
Sir,
stream before I go to bed.
I'm probably only going to since we started earlier. I'm probably going to jump off here in a little bit as well. Probably in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, it was good talking to you guys. I'm excited for next week where we fully dive into this
Cannot wait.
20 sided dice rolling adventure with dragons that don't have tattoos or robot arms, but that's fine. 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. I cannot wait. We already and most of us, for the most part, I'm gonna, when I get off stream, message Steve and